Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Woodburn's Thrive in China Roundtable. We are back from the summer break and we are starting off on September 6th with our first roundtable of the fall. Before we start today's roundtable, I just want to emphasize who is this roundtable for? Really, this roundtable is for newbies to China who are exploring and evaluating opportunities that are existing at the moment. It's also for startups in China that are trying to understand how to create their business models and see whether it makes sense for them to have an establishment in Hong Kong and or in China, as well as those experienced China hands that may be looking to reevaluate their business models and see whether Hong Kong would make sense for them or not. I always like to know who is in my audience and have a little bit of an understanding of everyone's background. If you are here live, please do type into the chat box, what stage are you in your journey with Asia, Hong Kong, China? Are you a newbie? Are you a startup? Or are you experienced China hand? A little bit about myself, for those of you that are also new to the roundtable or aren't familiar with Woodburn. My name is Christina Kohler-Colucci. I'm the head of business advisory at Woodburn Accountants and Advisors. I'm a leading expert on inbound investment to China. That has been my specialty for the last 20 years. I have been predominantly in the corporate services and corporate compliance sector. What does corporate services and compliance means? It means that I help companies to create business models that will suit their levels of risk, their levels of financial resources for their investments into China. I then help them implement their structures as well as do all of the corporate compliance, which is the administrative work that has to happen that entity remains in good standing. I've worked with over 750 international companies across multiple industries, multiple sectors, all the way from consumer brands in the F&B cosmetic space, all the way through to biopharm, to fitness, to a whole variety of industries. And I help companies with three stages of their journey, everything from market entry to implementation to then growth and scaling up. If you are interested to know more about me, know more about what we do, head on over to our website, which is woodburnglobal.com. You'll find a whole list of our services, as well as a bunch of free resources in the form of short articles, ebooks, industry guides, our podcast links, etc. What we are offering to our Thrive in China Roundtable community is a free copy of our ebook, which is the 10 biggest mistakes companies make in China. So if you want a free copy of that, email me, Christina@woodburnglobal.com. So let's get cracking. This is Roundtable 22 for the calendar year 2023. If you guys have not had a chance, all of our past Roundtable recordings are up on a playlist on our YouTube channel. You can, at the end of today's session, and once the formatting is done, you'll get a link to this YouTube video, but you will also get a link to our playlist as well, so you can review those topics as well. In today's topic, we're talking about developing a direct import program from Asia using Hong Kong. Now, this topic is predominantly geared to those of you that are procuring and working with supplier or supplier network, not only in China, but also throughout the APAC region. We want to highlight how Hong Kong can be beneficial by developing this direct import program, by having this network of a bunch of different suppliers that are located throughout the Asian region. So I want to start off with the basics, and most of you might have already surpassed this, but there are a lot of you that are still newbies to this whole APAC discussion. So I do want to start off with the basics in terms of the options to source in China and or Asia. So the first option is sourcing with no local representation, okay? What does this mean? It basically means that you might not be ready yet to establish your own business in China. you might not be ready yet to hire your own team of merchandisers in Asia to help facilitate the development and the network building of all the suppliers that you are collaborating with. So you might need to have some form of local representation to help you and guide you through that, right? So what does this mean? Basically, it means that you might have between 1 and 600 different suppliers in Asia, where you need help with warehousing, you need help with logistics, and you are coordinating from your headquarters with all of these different parties, okay? It can become chaotic, it can become difficult, it can be that you find that there are certain weaknesses in the supply chain where you need to be able to come in and fix those weaknesses to either speed up the process or just simply make it more efficient. Now, in terms of sourcing with no local representation, I do want to offer you a couple of case studies. So there was a Spanish SME, very tight budget, does not have the capital investment to establish a structure locally, but they obviously have a team of people in Spain that are merchandising experts who travel to Asia frequently enough, attend the trade shows, meet with suppliers, handle all the negotiations, do quality control inspections, etc. But what they've learned through the pandemic is that they need help on the ground to facilitate those functions, either attending those trade shows or doing the quality control inspections, etc. So they do need some form of local representation. Case study 2 is also in the process of all of this, making sure that your trademarks are protected. A lot of people make the assumption, and here I've used an example for China, but I'm going to use this as an example for all of Asia. You have suppliers in multiple countries in APAC. Don't make the assumption that just because you're not selling into those markets, you should not be protecting your IP in those markets, okay? We had a situation where an American company had over 100 suppliers in China alone. One of those suppliers had a falling out with the HQ. They became a non-supplier, basically. And as a revenge tactic, they registered the IP, so all the trademark, all the brand assets with the China Trademark Office, as well as the Customs Office. And as a result of that, any shipment with those brand assets on it were halted and stopped at customs before exportation. Now, this case went to court, and for a period of 3 to 4 months, they had to pivot themselves and again, refunction to be able to export. Chaos, right, in the making of all of this. So in both scenarios, 1, we had the pandemic. 2, people don't think about administrative steps, and this is why I come into the picture, because this is what we do on a day-to-day basis, is really thinking of your full checklist of what needs to be done when you're creating this direct import program, okay? Trademarks are a big topic. And it's something that's so easy. Now, the second step, obviously, to not having any local representation is actually using a sourcing agent in Asia to help facilitate all of this, right? It's finding a sourcing agent who finds the suppliers, vets the suppliers, manages the production process, manages the quality control inspections, handles the export logistics, and hopefully gives you the checklist of what you need to do, like trademark registrations, to protect your brand and your brand assets in China. All right. Now, obviously, when you are looking for sourcing agents, the key step is doing a due diligence on them, understanding who are their existing clients, what are their specialities, and understanding how you want to work with them. You know, there are sourcing agents that physically do the buy and the sell, meaning they buy from your suppliers and sell to you, or those that just work on commission agency agreements. Now, for me, the trend has been that companies are becoming more and more independent in APAC, that I find it more useful to have full transparency over your supplier network and deal directly with your suppliers, that you are responsible for the negotiations, final price discussions, etc., versus your sourcing agent, which is why I like the commission methodology better. because it just automatically allows you to have more transparency. Okay. Here is a case study of a French pharmaceutical company looking for sourcing agents throughout China. They have over 25 agents globally that are specialized per jurisdiction, but also per product line. You have to remember that if you have a wide range of product lines, you'll might only find suppliers that are specialized in certain ones and others that are specialized in all. Our recommendation in this case study is don't put all your eggs in one basket when you're working with agents. You don't want to sign exclusivity agreements. You want to be able to have the freedom to decide to exit a relationship, but also have the backup of other agents available in case you need it. So let's get cracking on what the direct import program is using Hong Kong. Okay, so this is actually the business model that I want to highlight today. Basically, you have your suppliers in China and Asia. Okay, you then have a Hong Kong company, and then you have your customers. The beauty of setting up a direct import program is that you do not have to purchase anymore directly from your suppliers and then sell to your customers. You can actually set up this Hong Kong company that is yours. It's a subsidiary of your HQ that buys from any jurisdiction in APAC and then sells directly to your customers, and the shipment is direct. Not only does it help, and I'll go into the advantages on the next slide, but not only does it help from a logistical standpoint and a time frame standpoint, but it also helps to facilitate the paperwork that's involved. Okay, so your Hong Kong company places a purchase order with your supplier. Invoice comes from the supplier to your Hong Kong company. Hong Kong company pays the supplier. Hong Kong company, your customers place a purchase order to your Hong Kong company, so no longer to your HQ. Hong Kong issues an invoice to your customers, and your customers make the payment to your Hong Kong company, and the shipments are direct. Okay, so that is ultimately the business model. Now, what are the characteristics or the goals of the direct import program? The first one is you are sourcing from Asia and reselling in your home country or to third-party destinations. If you are reselling directly to third-party destinations, you can do that direct and have those direct shipments without that shipment having to bypass where you are in your home country. The second is selling to large customers which accept direct shipment. By large customers, I mean their purchase orders are containers worth of product. And if they are containers worth of product, again, why are you shipping that to your home country? Why aren't you shipping that direct? Okay, so we're talking again about 20, 40-foot containers that are being shipped directly from your suppliers, obviously in the name of your new Hong Kong company, to your customers. The third one is if you want to centralize your sourcing functions in Asia, okay? That means if you are building up a network of suppliers and that network is moving out of China into Vietnam or into Philippines or into other areas within the APAC region, then why not centralize that sourcing function in one location? Again, Hong Kong is what we are recommending today. The fourth one is needing to have better control over quality. So what a lot of our clients are doing is hiring QC experts in Hong Kong under their Hong Kong company to travel and visit within the APAC region their supplier network to make sure that the quality control is up to standard. Now, of course, you can outsource the QC to outsource providers. That's obviously something that you can do initially as you have a smaller network, but at some point you may want to overtake that role. The fifth one is needing to have better control over the receipts and payments that are being made, i.e. paying suppliers, receiving income from your customers. And number 6 is wanting to sell to your customers on FOB Asian terms, okay? Where you might get a better deal, have a higher margin if you take that opportunity. Remember, if you do have any questions, please just insert them into the chat box, and we'll have a Q&A session at the end. Now, the key features of the direct import program is to provide full support for your trading function for the APAC region without having high fixed costs involved of having a physical office. And obviously, everyone's goal is to minimize not only the costs, i.e. your budget, but also the investment risk. Okay, so what does this mean? Now, I just want to highlight, I've used Woodburn as the example here for many of these things, but there are thousands of corporate service providers that offer similar services to us. So it's just compare who you want to work with, right? I'm just highlighting the concept of this direct import program for you today. So the key features of the direct import program, again, to reiterate, are selling either FOB Asia or ex-warehouse from your suppliers, managing the letters of credit and trade finance in Hong Kong, handling the trade documentation and liaising with those vendors in Asia without having necessarily a team of people doing that are hired by you, but outsourcing that function, addressing quality concerns with suppliers that obviously you can outsource that function or hire people internally so that you've got control over that. And the fifth is taking advantage of Hong Kong's attractive tax regime. So for your reference, the tax regime is between 8.25% and 16.5% of corporate tax income. So if I just go back to the business model, if you look here in the bubble, which says your new Hong Kong company, on the first 2 million Hong Kong dollars worth of profit, the income tax rate is 8.25%. How can you beat that? And anything above that is charged at 16.5%. Now, what I also want people to realize is that if you have the ability to create an offshore business model, meaning you have no staff in Hong Kong, no inventory kept in Hong Kong, you're keeping a real lean management structure, then you can also apply for offshore tax exemption, which means that the profit that you build up in Hong Kong will be at a 0% tax rate. Now, what I want to highlight about the tax structure is that there are all of these advantages, but we are not in a world right now where we are trying to evade taxes. Taxes have to be paid somewhere. The history of Hong Kong is that a lot of entrepreneurs, business leaders would set up Hong Kong in order to prevent them from paying taxes in their home jurisdictions, which are generally at a higher rate. And so they would create structures in Hong Kong that would not be quite above board. And certainly in today's world is definitely not above board. So make sure that when you are thinking about this direct import program and you are thinking about setting something up in Hong Kong to facilitate this direct import program, that you are talking to your tax advisors in your home jurisdiction about how to structure that Hong Kong company, who should be the shareholders, who should be the directors, and how to take advantage of the tax regime and what impact would you have if you were to bring dividends back. Now, there is no dividends tax in Hong Kong, but if your goal is to eventually bring that profit back to your home jurisdiction, what impact would that have on you? It's different for every jurisdiction. So I can't mention every jurisdiction here on today's presentation, but that's why one takeaway to take away from this is really talk to your international tax advisors in your home jurisdiction about this. To really understand if there is an advantage of setting up this program. Now, how the program works. And I've gone into the details of this because I want people to understand how it works. Where do you need staff? How can you outsource certain functions? How can you save cost? Okay. Now, again, I've used Woodburn as the corporate service provider who would be helping you in this because it's my presentation and I can use my company as an example. But I just do want to highlight there are thousands of companies in Hong Kong that offer this solution. Okay, so it's a matter of comparing and seeing who offers exactly this to facilitate this direct import program. So what Woodburn does is that we help to develop a customized direct import program solution for you, depending on where your supplier network is. Do you need people on the ground? And there's like a whole series of initial questions that have to be asked about what you're planning on doing, i.e., how many trade transactions are you expecting? How many shipments are you expecting? Do you need to do consolidated shipments? Do shipments have to go into bonded logistics parks or not? Do your suppliers need to receive VAT refund? I'm specific on China now, but it would also depend on other jurisdictions in Asia. So there's this all preliminary kind of questionnaire that has to be discussed. Then Woodburn would incorporate a Hong Kong company for your direct import program structure. And Woodburn operates this Hong Kong company. It's yours, but we're operating it from our own office. And we've got the staff handling the day-to-day operations and the day-to-day running. What that means is we are receiving orders directly from your customers abroad. We're handling all the commercial matters, such as receipts, processing of letters of credit, invoicing, accounting, and banking. And we help your parent company to manage the supply chain. We are not negotiating with your suppliers. That is up to you to negotiate pricing. We are not handling quality control. You've got to understand that what we are handling is the administrative work that is involved with this Hong Kong company. Now, a lot of our clients will also decide that they've got enough manpower in their HQ to manage this day-to-day running. Totally fine. Okay, if you've got the manpower in your HQ, again, you can do that. What you just need to make sure is that the company in Hong Kong is under compliance and that whoever is doing your tax declarations and tax filings gets the right documentation at the right moment in time. All right. Now, having a Hong Kong company provides great flexibility in how you sell your products. As an Asian exporter, this new Hong Kong company represents an opportunity for you to leverage off of your existing retail, design, and purchasing networks and to sell into new markets if you choose to do so. So it also gives you the opportunity to expand into new markets. What a lot of people don't consider is, as an Asian exporter, it also means you can expand into the Asian market for selling. Most people make the assumption that this is a great business model to then do with your HQ, to do with customers that are in Europe, in the US, in Canada, in Australia, wherever they might be. But, you know, selling into the APAC region is now becoming a hot topic. Selling into China is becoming a hot topic. And this is something that you can then also create as you move along your journey. These new markets could be anywhere in the world, like I mentioned. Could be you want to sell now in Vietnam, could be that you want to sell into Japan or Korea. And the key is that the sales from the Hong Kong company would be booked on an FOB Asian port basis, and these goods are then shipped directly to your larger customers. This helps frees up capital and inventory that obviously would otherwise be tied up through the warehouses. The benefits of the direct import program is one, taxes. So as I highlighted before, you've got a range between 8.25 and 16.5%. Again, I want to reiterate, talk to your international tax advisors about the structure, how you would structure this to take advantage of all of this situation and not be double taxed in your home jurisdiction. It gives you the flexibility where you can choose to sell either FOB Asia or ex-warehouse. It helps you to free capital. Now, FOB sales are often on letters of credit terms, and this frees up significant capital financing and inventory before the payment is ever made. What I want people to realize is that Hong Kong, in terms of its banking system, is much more mature than that of China. You can make transactions faster. You can make transactions, and by transactions, I mean you can make payments faster, you can receive payments easier. There's not this bureaucracy like there is in China in terms of the day-to-day operations of your banking functions. A lot of people are wanting to build up this direct import program from China because their thought process is that their supplier network is only in China. There are pros and cons to that you have to think about and definitely compare them with Hong Kong. One of the cons of doing it in China is really the banking system and the tediousness that there is in working with the banks there in terms of receiving payments and making payments. Okay, and the benefit in Hong Kong is that it's just very easy to do. The variable costs, now with most fees being transaction-based, the cost of administering the Hong Kong subsidiary is driven predominantly by how much your business grows. So you don't have this large fixed overhead cost. If you've got only one transaction, you're charged on one transaction. If you've got 100 transactions, you're charged on 100 transactions. So there is this variable cost that gives you this flexibility when developing this program, because it's all outsourced, right? All the administrative functions are outsourced. So you could hire staff who would only work on one transaction per month. Maybe they would also work on 100, but as you're building up your business, you might have some months no business, no transactions, and other months you might be full and busy. It might be a seasonal operation as well. Control, now, by what people underestimate a lot is time zone issues. If you are in the US, for example, and you've got a 12, 13-hour, if not sometimes 15-hour time zone issue with Asia, by using Woodburn's trade department to administer all these functions and liaise with suppliers about the supply chain and paperwork, etc., it's freeing you up to hire team members, but also it's causing greater efficiency within the supply chain to get things moving faster. Okay, but like I said, if your decision is not to use Woodburn for this because you feel like you have your manpower in the US or wherever you're based, use that. Absolutely no problems to using that. It's just one of the downsides to that would be the time zone issues and maybe the language issues as well. Another benefit of this program is that you have low risk, meaning that you don't bear the financial burden of lease agreements, renting office space. You don't have the financial burden of paying salaries every single month. You don't have the financial burden of overheads. You know, you're outsourcing most of the functions. Obviously, if you start to decide that you need to have quality control staff, that's another issue, right? Once you start analyzing what you need to be able to support this business, then obviously you're going to have staff and you're going to have overheads. In terms of growth, like we highlighted earlier, you have a flexibility on how you want to create your payment terms and how you want to create what your terms of supply chain are, whether it's freight on board, whether it's X warehouse. You also have the ability to now create sales channels. My philosophy is this: you've developed your home jurisdiction business from the ground up. And you have it. It's already in existence. By having Hong Kong, it gives you greater flexibility to decide how you want to trade. For you to decide how to create new sales channels and promote that business. It gives you flexibility on how you want to negotiate with your customers. Do your customers still want to buy from your HQ, or do your customers still want to buy from, or do your customers want to buy from a Hong Kong company because from an image perspective, it looks better? We actually have a client at the moment who is being pushed to set up a Hong Kong company because they have one major supplier in Hong Kong who is telling them, we've refused to transact with your US company. And as a consequence, they're saying, we only want to transact with a Hong Kong company. So they're being pushed in order to maintain this relationship with this supplier that they love. They've worked for years. They're being pushed to localize that business and have a Hong Kong company that transacts solely with that Hong Kong supplier. You might have certain triggers with suppliers, with customers that are pushing you to create this direct import program. Just remember, the whole point of developing these business models is to grow and to scale up. And as a consequence to that is make more money and make more profit. Things might trigger you, might push you to do that. Knowing that you have a Hong Kong company gives you that flexibility to cater to that, whether it's for sales channels, whether it is for your supplier network. Now, just to finish off today in terms of your supplier networks, right? We want to focus on growth. My aim as a business leader, as well as a family-owned business, as an entrepreneur, is to grow. Our goal is to grow, is to be more profitable, is to be more successful. Everybody has a different definition of what that is. But at the same time, I have to focus on administration in order to be able to grow. And a lot of times people forget that they have to focus on the administration aspect. So I want to give you a little bit of a checklist on what to think about when sourcing in Asia, what to think about, what are the most common pitfalls that exist when collaborating with people, to end today's presentation. So the first one that I want you to think about is doing your proper preparation and research, okay? When sourcing in the APAC region, you need to be prepared. You need to have a detailed strategy. You need to understand what suppliers are you looking for, where are those suppliers based, and how does the supply chain look like? And then analyze, excuse me, what third parties can help you to facilitate or implement that strategy. The next is a lack of adequate due diligence on the suppliers. I still get emails from people who say, I found a supplier, I paid them a deposit, and now they've disappeared. I'm making this a short story because I could go into long discussions about this. When working with new suppliers, to be quite frank, even when working with old suppliers, make sure you do a continued due diligence. Are they legitimate? Do they really exist? Do they really still exist? Now that the borders are open in China and now that COVID regulations throughout Asia are lessening, there is no more excuses about not being able to fly over and inspect. If you feel like you don't want to fly over, then you do need local representation to support you on that, to make sure that there is a due diligence, an ongoing due diligence that is happening with your suppliers, okay? The next is quotations. Now, in order to be able to be competitive, to bring your product to market, you need to contact a variety of different suppliers and compare, okay? Now, we always want to negotiate for the best price, but I want to make sure people understand that you also want the best quality, okay? You don't want to work with someone that gives you the lowest price and actually the quality is not what was promised, which is why the due diligence aspect comes hand in hand with this. Make sure that you are vetting people. When you get quotations and you see such varieties, make sure you're then taking that due diligence step to go and inspect their factories, inspect what they're producing, what are their quality levels like. Don't forget to get references and see who they've been already working with. Now, provide detailed product packaging and shipment information is also critical, and this usually comes hand in hand with then doing quality control testing. Now, again, you can send people over to do the quality control testing, or ultimately you can also hire your own team on the ground or outsource that to inspection companies, all right? But besides the mandatory testing requirements, make sure that the packaging, product labeling, carton measurements, all the shipping details that you have outlined are being followed. You have to make sure that you're vetting that as well. And then obviously monitoring production, quality, and shipment arrangement. And this is, again, part of the merchandisers as well as QC jobs to make sure that they are doing that, okay? Because you are thousands of miles away, it might be difficult to do that, which is why you might want to think about local representation to be able to do that. Now, if you've got a multiple network of suppliers throughout the APAC region, so a few in China, a few in Vietnam, a few in, I don't know, Korea, Japan, wherever they might be located, it's figuring out how to manage that, again, either through outsourcing or having that local team there to support you. To finish off today, I just want to highlight the key considerations when sourcing in China and or Asia. And again, these are considerations that I've seen over time, right? One is the lack of control and communication. And I've seen that predominantly during the period of COVID. Borders were shut, people couldn't be reached. You know, there were severe lockdowns in China. There was a lack of control. There was a lack of communication happening. In order to be an efficient business and running smoothly, the question is, how do you improve on that? How can you improve in that? With ultimately the goal of saving cost, but also ultimately increasing profit. The next one is turning a blind eye. There are a lot of unethical situations that occur in Asia, not just in China, but in Asia in general. Can we afford to turn a blind eye? Do we, and this leads me into ethical situations as well, Do we need to do quality control inspections? Do we need to have corporate governance placed when developing these network of suppliers? The fourth one is inexperienced staff not knowing how to do business in Asia. And this is predominantly emphasizing those that are traveling in from anywhere around the world to Asia. You know, they may never have lived there. They maybe have never even done business there. It can lead to a lot of negotiation standpoints, quality control issues, if you don't have experienced staff knowing how to do business, how to negotiate, how to manage the supply chain. Obviously, you're always going to have cultural differences that will exist. The number 6 is know your supplier due diligence. If your suppliers are subcontracting, how are you managing those subcontractors? Are you aware that there are subcontractors? Again, that's all part of the due diligence aspect. Be aware of end clients knowing your supplier network. Now, this is another reason why you may want to set up this direct import program, is because you want to change the shipping documentation so that your suppliers are not mentioned anywhere. Your supplier network is ultimately like your IP. It's something you've developed. Those are your relationships. They're your connections. They cost you money to develop. Why are you releasing that information to your end customers who can then go direct? So again, the advantage of having that Hong Kong company is changing all of that shipping documents, changing those certificate of origins, that you are hiding who your supplier network actually is. The next is obviously in the APAC region, we are talking, I hate to use the third world countries, but I think from a government perspective, they are not as mature as the Western world. And the question is, how are governments involved in the products that you are manufacturing with those third-party suppliers? What are logistical or supply chain restrictions? What do you need to know from a bureaucracy standpoint? If you use sourcing agents, they're not going to reveal all of those details to you because, again, that's their IP. They're based there. They know how to do all of these functions, and they know what the government bureaucracy issues are. They know how to interact with the government. If you're going off and doing this on your own, you need to build a certain knowledge on how this all works. And that's going to be critical. And then number 10 is abnormal, unexpected, unethical methods of payment to or through certain channels. So like I mentioned earlier, the banking system in Hong Kong is very transparent, very easy to receive funds, very easy to send funds. In China, there are a lot of government interactions in relation to receiving funds from abroad and sending funds abroad. There are also suppliers that have very unique ways of receiving funds. You'll have a manufacturer in China that has a bank account in Hong Kong. You'll have a manufacturer in China who gives you his personal bank account. This is part, again, of the due diligence that you have to do to understand who are you working with, why are they giving you private personal information, why are they manufacturing in China and doing it out of Hong Kong. These are the little nitty-gritty details that could disrupt your business at a certain point. And you need to understand them from the start of developing that relationship and understanding how to develop it. That is the end of today's presentation. So I just want to go back to, just to finish off a little bit before we hit the Q&A, is the diagram. I've gone through the benefits of the direct import program, how it works, but again, just to reiterate the flow of what it would look like. Ultimately, you're creating this new Hong Kong company that manages your supplier network in the APAC region and sells to your customers wherever they may be sitting globally. This prevents things going directly to you, but going directly to your customers. And it's just there to help facilitate and ease the whole process and also create efficiency in what you are doing. It may provide also a better image to your customers wherever they may be based, that you have a seat in Asia, that you are there, and that you are managing your supplier network, and that's what's bringing added value, and that's why your customers should be working for you. Okay, so I do want to conclude on that point. If you do, again, I want to repeat, if you've got any questions, put them into the chat box. Let me just get to the end of the presentation. again, I always finish these roundtables wanting to understand what your biggest takeaway from today was. And if you are struggling to develop an import program in Asia, you can definitely reach out to me, send me an email. Johnny was asking, please speak about selling crude oil into China or Asia to large customers. The crude is sourced from the Middle East. I don't have experience, Johnny, specifically on crude oil. I cannot have experience in every single industry and sector. And selling into China or Asia is a different standpoint than what I'm talking about today, because I'm talking about procurement from Asia abroad. But if you are looking to sell into China, into Asia, crude oil is a restricted area. So you would first of all need to understand what are the bureaucratic restrictions that are involved selling into those regions. I don't have experience on that. You may need to go to a law firm specifically who's got that experience or who has clients in those sectors to guide you on that. The workflow would be, I assume, predominantly similar into, you know, you have got your customers in China that are buying from you in the Middle East, and then the shipments are direct. Again, I don't know enough about crude oil to be able to help you on that. So apologies upfront for that. But for everybody else that's watching live or watching on replay, if you do have any questions, like I mentioned, don't hesitate to reach out. You can email me at Christina@woodburnglobal.com, but also as you are in the community, I'll be providing you with the link where you can set up a call with me and we can discuss your pain points that you may have or help that you may need, and we'll see if we can help you on that. Just to finish off, we are moving our Thrive in China community also into a WeChat group where we bring the topics in, but it's also a community of over 200 business professionals in China that you can ask questions about doing business in China. If you want to connect, you can connect with me. My ID is KNCOLUCCIA, and then we can send you the invite to the group chat. I'll also be providing these details into the email that will be sent out later on once we've got the YouTube recording all uploaded and set up. And just to highlight what our upcoming topics are, next week we're talking about how to launch your business in China, and we're going through 14 key considerations you have to make when launching your business in China. Again, it's a bit of a checklist. Have you thought about everything from an administrative aspect? As you are already in the community, these are available to you. It's every Wednesday at 1 p.m. Central European time, 7 p.m. Shanghai time. Don't hesitate to join in. It's always the same link as well. In the WeChat community, we do send out reminders, and we do send out weekly email reminders as well to the community about joining it. I want to thank everybody for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed today's session. And I look forward to seeing you again next week. Take care and goodbye.